The champagne flute shattered against the hardwood floor, amber liquid spreading like a stain across my grandmother's Persian rug. Dmitri didn't even flinch, just continued his animated conversation in rapid Russian with his mother, Svetlana, who sat perched on my white leather sofa like a disapproving raven. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Она даже не может правильно убрать дом, he said, gesturing dismissively in my direction. She can't even clean a house properly. His mother cackled, her jewelry rattling as she shook with laughter. Ты должен был жениться на русской девушке, Дима. Эта американка бесполезна. You should have married a Russian girl. Dima. This American is useless. I bent down slowly, carefully picking up the larger shards of glass, my hands steady despite the rage building in my chest like a pressure cooker. 4 years. 4 years of this. And they had no idea that every word, every insult, every cruel joke had been absorbed, understood, catalogued in my mind with perfect clarity. My name is Caroline Mitchell, and I am fluent in 7 languages. Russian was my third, but Dmitry Volkov didn't know that. None of them did. When I met Dmitry at a medical conference in Boston, I'd been a promising resident in neurosurgery, working 100-hour weeks at Massachusetts General Hospital. He was the charismatic pharmaceutical rep with the dazzling smile and the slight accent that made every woman in the room lean closer. He pursued me relentlessly, flowers to the hospital, surprise lunches, notes left on my windshield. In my exhausted, lonely state, his attention felt like sunshine breaking through storm clouds. Our courtship was a whirlwind. 3 months of romantic dinners and weekend getaways. He never mentioned his family much, just that they were traditional and lived in Brighton Beach, Brooklyn's Little Russia. When he proposed at the top of the Prudential Tower, overlooking the glittering Boston skyline, I said yes without hesitation. The warning signs started small. A comment here, a suggestion there. You don't need to work such long hours anymore, Malishka. My mother thinks doctors should focus on family once they marry. Wouldn't you be happier with a less stressful career? 6 months after our wedding, I made the biggest mistake of my life. I quit my residency. Dmitry convinced me it was temporary, just until we started a family. His pharmaceutical sales job paid well, he said. We could afford for me to take time off. His mother was getting older and needed help. The Russian community was tight-knit, and a working wife reflected poorly on a husband's ability to provide. I was stupid. Blinded by what I thought was love. The shift happened gradually, like water slowly coming to a boil. First it was just his mother visiting. Then his sister Irina, with her 3 bratty children. Then his brother Alexei and his wife Natasha. Soon, our modest 3-bedroom house in Medford became a revolving door for the entire Volkov clan. And with them came the Russian language, flowing constantly. A river I was never meant to navigate, except I could navigate it. Perfectly. I'd studied Russian literature at Yale before medical school, spending a semester abroad in St. Petersburg. I'd lived with a host family, attended lectures at the university, and spent my evenings in smoky cafes discussing Dostoevsky and Bulgakov with local students. By the time I returned to the States, I could read Pushkin in the original text and argue about Tolstoy's philosophy without missing a beat. But when I met Dmitry, something told me to keep that knowledge to myself. Call it intuition, call it caution. I'd mentioned my other languages casually, the French and Spanish and even some Mandarin, but when he asked if I spoke Russian, I said no. Just a gut feeling that turned out to be the smartest decision I ever made. Because the moment his family realized I was a real wife, safely married and seemingly ignorant of their language, the masks came off. She's gaining weight, Irina said now, looking me up and down as I finished cleaning the glass. American women have no discipline. I was 130 pounds. I ran 5 miles every morning. Dmitry tells me she can't cook, Svetlana added, lighting one of her perpetual cigarettes despite my repeated requests not to smoke in the house. What kind of wife can't cook? I'd made a standing rib roast last week that would have made Gordon Ramsay weep. Dmitri ate 3 servings and then told his mother I'd ordered takeout. She's barren, too. Apparently, Natasha chimed in from the doorway, her hand resting on her pregnant belly with practiced superiority. 4 years and no babies. Maybe she's defective. The medical terms flashed through my mind. We'd been to 3 fertility specialists, and every single test came back the same. Dmitri had severe oligospermia, a sperm count so low that natural conception was nearly impossible. But he refused to acknowledge it, refused treatment, and instead let his family believe the problem was mine. I dumped the glass shards into the trash and turned back to face them with the practiced expression of confused concern I'd perfected over the years. Is everything okay? You all seem upset, Dmitri waved his hand dismissively. Just family talk, Caroline. Nothing for you to worry about. He switched back to Russian, his voice taking on the sharp edge I'd come to recognize as contempt. Боже, она такая тупая. Смотрит на нас этими большими глазами, как потерянная собака. God, she's so stupid. Looking at us with those big eyes like a lost dog, his mother cackled again. Хорошо, что она не понимает. Можешь сказать ей что угодно. Good thing she doesn't understand. You can say anything to her. Watch this, Dmitri said in English, turning to me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Caroline, sweetheart, could you make us some tea? Mama's tired from her trip? Of course, I said softly, heading toward the kitchen. Behind me, I heard Irina's voice, thick with amusement. Она как служанка. Это жалко. She's like a servant. It's pathetic. That's what wives are for, Dmitri replied in Russian. And they all laughed. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. In the kitchen, I gripped the edge of the granite countertop, my knuckles white. The tea kettle sat on the stove and I filled it with water. My movements automatic while my mind raced through 4 years of accumulated insults, lies and systematic humiliation. The first time I'd understood their conversation. We'd been married for 3 months. Svetlana had come for Sunday dinner. And as I'd served the pelmeni, I'd spent all afternoon making, following her own recipe to the letter. She'd leaned over to Dmitri and whispered, Ona готовит как свинья. Это несъедобно. She cooks like a pig. This is inedible. Dmitri had nodded, taking another bite. I know, Mama, but what can I do? American women are hopeless in the kitchen. I'd kept my face neutral, but inside something cracked. The insults escalated. My appearance, my intelligence, my worth as a woman. Nothing was off limits when they thought I couldn't understand. And Dmitri was always the ringleader, his cruelty sharpened by his family's encouragement. She's getting dull, he'd told Alexei last month during a barbecue. No fire anymore. Just this boring, obedient wife who does whatever I say. Sometimes I miss the challenge. Trade her in for a newer model. Alexei had joked, flipping burgers. Plenty of Russian girls would line up for a successful man like you. Maybe I will, Dmitri had replied, and they'd both laughed. I'd smiled and brought them more beer, but I wasn't just smiling and taking notes anymore. 6 months ago, I'd started planning. It began when I found the stack of bills hidden in Dmitri's home office. Credit cards I didn't know existed. Maxed out with charges to restaurants I'd never been to. Hotels in cities he'd supposedly never visited. Jewelry purchases that never made it to me. I'd photographed everything. Then I'd hired a private investigator, a woman named Rebecca Chen who specialized in infidelity cases. She was expensive, but I'd kept my own bank account, a small safety net funded by the consulting work I'd been doing remotely, using my medical knowledge to review cases for law firms. Dmitri thought I was wasting time on the computer. He had no idea I was making 6 figures a year and hiding every penny. Rebecca's reports confirmed what I'd suspected. The restaurants were dates with a rotating cast of women. The hotels were afternoon rendezvous. The jewelry was for a young pharmaceutical sales rep named Katya, ironically a Russian girl from his company. He'd been cheating consistently for at least 2 years, probably longer, but I'd waited. Bided my time, collected evidence, because I'd learned something important from watching my own mother's divorce. The wife who strikes first from a position of strength always wins. The tea kettle whistled. and I prepared a tray with Svetlana's favorite Russian tea, the expensive kind she'd made Dmitri buy at the specialty store in Brighton Beach. I arranged some cookies on a plate, the ones I'd baked yesterday while listening to them insult my baking through the baby monitor I'd hidden in the living room. Yes, baby monitors. I had 6 of them now, strategically placed throughout the house. Every conversation, every insult, every incriminating word, all recorded, all saved, all time-stamped. The cloud storage was in my name only, paid for through my secret account. I carried the tray back to the living room, my face a mask of domestic contentment. "Here you go," I said brightly, setting it on the coffee table. Svetlana didn't even look at me, just reached for the tea with her gnarled, jeweled fingers. «Дмитрий, ты должен найти настоящую женщину. Это даже не дает тебе детей. Дмитрий, you need to find a real woman. This one can't even give you children." "I'm trying, Mama," Dmitri replied in Russian, his voice weary. "But divorce is expensive. I need to wait until the right moment." My heart stopped, but my face remained neutral. "What are you waiting for?" Alexei asked, reaching for a cookie without a thank you. "She has nothing. You have everything." "Not quite," Dmitri said, and something in his tone made me pause as I turned to leave. "There's still the house. It's in both our names. Stupid mistake on my part. I need to get her to sign a quitclaim deed first, transfer it fully to me. Then I can file. How will you do that?" Irina asked. Dmitri smiled, and it was the most predatory expression I'd ever seen on his face. "I've been convincing her she's depressed. Got her to see my friend Victor. He's a psychiatrist, very understanding. A few more months of the right medications, the right documentation, and I can make a case that she's not mentally competent to handle her own affairs. Then a power of attorney, a quick deed transfer, and done." The room spun. I gripped the back of the armchair to steady myself. "That's brilliant, brother," Alexei said, raising his tea in a toast. "Always thinking ahead. What about after?" Natasha asked. "Where will she go?" Dmitri shrugged. "Not my problem. Maybe back to her parents in Ohio. They're still alive, I think. She barely talks to them anymore. I've made sure of that. Isolated her nicely over the years, he had. Phone calls intercepted, visits discouraged, family events he insisted we skip. I'd thought he just wanted us to be close. Now I understood he'd been cutting my support system, strand by strand, like a spider wrapping up prey. "Dmitri, я так горжусь тобой," Svetlana said, patting his hand. "Dmitri, I'm so proud of you." I walked to the kitchen on autopilot, my mind reeling. The psychiatrist appointments I'd gone to, thinking Dmitri was trying to help with my sadness. Sadness he'd caused. The medications that made me foggy and compliant. The gentle suggestions that I sign paperwork to make things easier. It had all been orchestrated. A long game to leave me with nothing. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Rebecca. "Urgent. Call me." I slipped out the back door into our small yard, my hands shaking as I dialed. "Caroline?" Rebecca's voice was tight with urgency. "I've been trying to reach you. You need to see what I found. What is it?" Dimitri's not just cheating. He's been funneling money out of your accounts. Small amounts, regular transfers to an offshore account. I tracked it. He's moved about $85,000 of your consulting income over the past year. You said he didn't have access to that account? My blood ran cold. He shouldn't. It's in my name only. He must have gotten your information somehow. Banking passwords maybe when you were on those medications. Caroline, there's more. The psychiatrist he sent you to? Viktor Petrov? I did some digging. His medical license was suspended 3 years ago in New York for falsifying patient records. He's been practicing under the radar, cash only, helping people like Dmitri build cases for mental incompetency. The world tilted. Everything, the medications, the confusion, the feeling that I was losing my mind, it had all been manufactured. Dmitri hadn't been trying to help me. He'd been trying to destroy me. Rebecca, I need everything you have. Every photo, every financial record, every piece of evidence, and I need it organized for a lawyer. Already done. I'm emailing it now. Caroline, you need to move fast. If he gets you to sign that deed. He won't, I said, my voice hard with a certainty I hadn't felt in years. I'm done playing the victim. What are you going to do? I looked back at the house, seeing Dimitri's silhouette through the kitchen window, laughing with his family while they plotted my complete destruction. I'm going to remind them that I'm a neurosurgeon who gave up everything for a man who never deserved me. And then I'm going to take it all back. I hung up and walked back inside, my mind already racing through the next steps. I needed a lawyer, a ruthless one. I needed to secure my finances, change every password, and lock down every asset. I needed to stop taking the medications immediately, get my own psychiatric evaluation, and document everything Viktor Petrov had done. But most importantly, I needed to keep pretending. Just a little longer. In the living room, the conversation had shifted. Svetlana was talking about Alexei's upcoming promotion at his finance firm, some big deal that was about to close. Dmitri was on his phone, texting someone with a small smile. Katya probably, planning their next rendezvous while his wife served tea like a trained dog. Caroline, Irina called out. Natasha needs more hot water. Of course, I said, taking the teapot with my empty smile firmly in place. As I filled it in the kitchen, I caught my reflection in the window. For the first time in 4 years, I really looked at myself. The woman staring back wasn't the confident surgeon who'd once held lives in her hands. She was a ghost, hollowed out by systematic abuse disguised as love. But underneath that ghost, I could see something else stirring. Something that had been dormant, but never dead. My phone buzzed again. An email from Rebecca with a file labeled Volkov Complete Evidence Package. Another text. Also, you should know, Alexei's promotion is happening at Dimitri's brother's company. Your husband's been getting kickbacks for referring clients. More financial fraud, I smiled. A real smile this time, sharp and cold. The tea kettle whistled, and I poured the hot water carefully, watching the steam rise. In Russian literature, there's a saying from Pushkin, «Лучше горькая правда, чем сладкая ложь». Better a bitter truth than a sweet lie. They'd fed me sweet lies for 4 years, thinking I was too stupid, too American, too broken to understand. Now they were about to taste bitter truth. I carried the teapot back to the living room. Dmitri was off the phone now, discussing something with Alexei in rapid Russian. Something about a funeral. Wait, who died? Irina asked. You didn't hear? Alexei's face was somber. Uncle Mikhail, father's brother. Heart attack yesterday. The funeral is Friday in Brighton Beach. A heavy silence fell over the room. Even Svetlana's face crumpled. Mikhail, she whispered. My God, I knew Mikhail. He was the patriarch of the Volkov family, the one who'd emigrated first and brought everyone else over. I'd met him twice, and both times he'd looked at me with something approaching pity, as if he knew what his nephew had become but was powerless to stop it. The whole family will be there, Alexei continued. Father, all the cousins, everyone. It'll be the first time we're all together in years. Dmitri ran a hand through his hair. Mama, you'll stay with us until the funeral, yes? Svetlana nodded numbly, and for the first time, I felt a flicker of sympathy. Whatever else she was, she'd lost her brother-in-law, and grief was genuine on her face. But then she looked up at me, and the contempt returned. You'll come to the funeral, of course. Try to dress appropriately for once. Черное платье, ничего провокационного. Black dress, nothing provocative. Of course, I said quietly, understanding every word. The funeral would be in 5 days. 5 days where the entire Volkov family would be gathered. All the aunts and uncles and cousins who'd been fed stories about the useless American wife. 5 days where they would expect me to stand silently in the background, not understanding a word, while they mourned and remembered and spoke freely about everything. 5 days to prepare the perfect response. I excused myself and went upstairs to our bedroom, closing the door with a soft click. My laptop was hidden in a box in the closet, under winter sweaters Dmitri never touched. I pulled it out and opened Rebecca's email, my eyes scanning document after document of evidence. Bank transfers, hotel receipts, restaurant bills, Photographs of Dmitri with at least 6 different women. Text messages recovered from his cloud backup, explicit and damning. Financial records showing the offshore account. The kickbacks from Alexei's company, even evidence of tax fraud. And there, in a subfolder, medical records from Viktor Petrov's office, obtained through means Rebecca didn't specify. Prescriptions for medications I didn't need. Notes describing me as delusional, possibly paranoid, experiencing marital discord due to mental instability. All fake. All designed to build a case for incompetency. But Rebecca had also obtained something else. My real medical records from Massachusetts General, my transcripts from Yale, my residency evaluations that praised my exceptional cognitive abilities and diagnostic precision. Documentation that I'd been perfectly healthy, mentally and physically until I'd married Dmitri Volkov. My phone rang. An unknown number. I answered carefully. Caroline Mitchell? This is Sandra Kwan from Kwan and Associates. Rebecca Chen referred you to me. She said you need a divorce attorney, and you need one who doesn't play nice. That's correct. I've reviewed the preliminary evidence she sent. Ms. Mitchell, I want you to listen carefully. What your husband has done constitutes not just infidelity and emotional abuse, but potential criminal fraud. The fake psychiatrist, the financial manipulation, the systematic isolation. This is textbook coercive control. And in Massachusetts, that changes everything. How? Massachusetts is an equitable distribution state, but judges have broad discretion when one spouse has engaged in economic misconduct or abusive behavior. With the evidence you have, we're not just talking about a fair split. We're talking about you walking away with the house, significant alimony, and possibly restitution for the stolen funds. He could also face criminal charges. My hands tightened on the phone. What do I need to do? First, stop taking any medications he's given you immediately. Tomorrow, I'll arrange for you to see a real psychiatrist for an evaluation, someone with impeccable credentials who can document your actual mental state. Second, I need you to gather any physical evidence you can, the medications themselves, paperwork, anything he's asked you to sign. Don't let him know you're suspicious. Can you do that? Yes. Good. Third, we need to secure your finances. Change every password tonight to everything. Banking, email, cloud storage, everything. Use a password manager and make them complicated. Do you have somewhere safe you can transfer your funds? I have an account he doesn't know about. Perfect. Move everything there tomorrow. Every penny from the accounts he has access to. He's already stolen $85,000. Let's not give him the chance to take more. What about the house? Don't sign anything. If he presents you with papers, tell him you want to read them carefully first. Stall. We'll file for divorce first. And we'll include a motion for emergency relief, restraining order, exclusive use of the marital home, freezing of all assets. With his fraud and your evidence, I can get that granted within days. There's a funeral Friday, I said. His family. They'll all be there. Sandra was quiet for a moment. Do you plan to attend? Yes. Caroline, that could be dangerous. If he suspects, he won't suspect anything, I said quietly. They never do. Another pause. Okay, but I want you to be careful. Men like Dmitri, when they realize they're losing control, they can become desperate, dangerous. I know, I said. But I'm done being afraid. After we hung up, I sat in the dim light of our bedroom, listening to the voices downstairs. They were louder now, the vodka flowing freely, the conversation bouncing between English and Russian as it always did when they drank. She's upstairs sulking, I heard Dmitri say. So sensitive. I barely said anything. You're too soft on her, Svetlana replied. My mother would have beaten that weakness out of me. Different times, Mama. Different times. I opened a new document on my laptop and began to write. Not notes, not evidence, a speech. In Russian. Fluent, perfect Russian. The kind I used to use when debating philosophy with my St. Petersburg friends over cheap wine and cigarettes in basement apartments that smelled like books and revolution. I wrote about lies and truth, about masks and revelations, about the particular cruelty of being underestimated by people who should have loved you. I wrote about silence and its power. about the strength required to stay quiet when every instinct screams to fight back. And I wrote about endings, the kind that come like thunder after years of gathering storms. When I was done, I saved the file with a simple title, Friday. Downstairs, the party was winding down. I heard Alexei and Natasha saying goodbye, Irina gathering her children. Car doors slamming, engines starting. Finally, silence. Dimitri's footsteps on the stairs, heavy with alcohol. He pushed open the bedroom door without knocking, loosening his tie. "You okay?" he asked, the bare minimum of concern in his voice. "Just tired," I said, closing my laptop quickly. "Your family's very energetic," he laughed. "They like you, you know. Mama was just saying so." The lie was so casual, so automatic, I almost admired it. "Almost. That's nice," I said quietly. "I like them too." "Good. Listen, Friday's going to be a long day. Uncle Mikhail's funeral. You'll need to be on your best behavior. The whole family will be watching." "I understand. Wear the black dress, the conservative one. And maybe don't talk too much. These things are very traditional, very Russian. Better to just blend into the background." "Of course," I said, meeting his eyes. "I wouldn't want to embarrass you." He smiled, satisfied with my compliance, and headed to the bathroom. I heard the shower start, and I lay back on the bed, staring at the ceiling. 4 more days. 4 days to perfect my speech, to make sure every piece of evidence was organized, to transform myself from victim back into the surgeon who'd once commanded operating rooms with the precision of a general. 4 days until the funeral, where the entire Volkov family would gather to mourn Uncle Mikhail, and instead bear witness to a resurrection. The wife they'd dismissed, mocked, and tried to destroy was about to rise from the ashes they thought they'd created, and when she spoke, in their language, with their secrets, backed by their lies documented and proven, the ground would shake beneath their feet. I closed my eyes and smiled in the darkness. Let them have their last few days of certainty. Let them believe the game was already won. Because I'd learned something important over these 4 years of forced silence. The most devastating attacks are the ones nobody sees coming, and I was done being invisible. The 4 days passed in a blur of careful preparation. Each morning, I woke before Dimitri, flushed the medications down the toilet, and replaced them with vitamins that looked similar enough to pass inspection. The fog that had clouded my mind for months began to lift, and with it came a clarity so sharp it almost hurt. Tuesday morning, I met with Dr. Patricia Huang, a psychiatrist Sandra had recommended. Her office was in downtown Boston, far from Dimitri's network. "Ms. Mitchell," she said after our 2-hour evaluation, "I can state with absolute certainty that you show no signs of depression, anxiety disorders, or any condition that would impair your judgment or competency. What you do show are classic symptoms of someone emerging from a psychologically abusive relationship." She typed as she spoke, her fingers flying across the keyboard. "I'm documenting everything. The fake medications, the gaslighting, the systematic isolation. This will be a crucial piece of your case." "Thank you," I said, my voice steady for the first time in months. "Caroline," she leaned forward, her expression serious. "What you're about to do, confronting them all at once. Are you sure? This kind of revelation can be dangerous." "I'm sure," I said. "They need to understand that I heard everything. Every word, every insult, every plan to destroy me. They need to know they never broke me. They just made me stronger." Wednesday, I met with Sandra at her office. She'd organized everything into a comprehensive legal package that made my hands shake when I held it. "We file Monday morning," she said, "the day after the funeral. By Monday afternoon, Dimitri will be served with divorce papers, a restraining order, and a motion to freeze all marital assets. He'll also receive notice that we're pursuing criminal charges for fraud and identity theft." "What about Viktor Petrov?" Sandra's smile was predatory. "I've already contacted the Massachusetts Board of Medicine. He's about to have a very bad week." Thursday night, Svetlana, Dimitri, and I had a quiet dinner. She'd been staying with us, and the constant presence was exhausting. But I maintained my mask perfectly. "Tomorrow will be difficult, Mama." Dmitri said in Russian, holding her hand. But we'll get through it together. Mikhail was a good man, she replied, tears in her eyes. He deserved better than a heart attack at 65. I served them tea, silent and obedient, while internally reviewing my speech one more time. Every word was burned into my memory now, every pause, every emphasis calculated for maximum impact. That night, as Dmitri slept beside me, I lay awake watching the ceiling fan rotate slowly overhead. Tomorrow would change everything. Tomorrow the invisible wife would become visible in the most spectacular way possible. Friday morning dawned gray and cold, appropriate for a funeral. I dressed in the conservative black dress Svetlana had specified, pinned my hair back in a simple bun, and wore minimal makeup. The perfect picture of a respectful, submissive wife. "You look appropriate," Dmitri said, straightening his own black suit in the mirror. "Remember, stay quiet. Let me do the talking." "Of course," I said softly. The funeral was at a Russian Orthodox church in Brighton Beach, a ornate building with golden domes and icons that glittered in the candlelight. The parking lot was already full when we arrived. The entire Volkov family had turned out to mourn Uncle Mikhail. Inside, I recognized faces from family gatherings over the years. Dmitri's father, Viktor Volkov Sr., a stern man who'd barely spoken to me. Aunt Galina with her permanent scowl. Cousins whose names I'd never learned because they'd never bothered to introduce themselves properly. And there, in the front pew, Alexei and Natasha with their children. The service was long, conducted entirely in Russian and Old Church Slavonic. I stood, sat, and kneeled at the appropriate times, keeping my eyes downcast, the model of a confused American wife trying to be respectful at an event she couldn't understand. Around me, the family wept and prayed. Whatever else Uncle Mikhail had been, he'd clearly been loved. I felt a pang of genuine sadness. He'd been kind to me, one of the few who had. After the service, we moved to the church hall for the repast. Long tables were laden with traditional foods, zakuski, pelmeni, blini with caviar, plates of pickled vegetables. Vodka flowed freely, and the conversation grew louder as people shared memories of Mikhail. I stayed on the periphery, serving food, refilling glasses, playing my role perfectly. But I was also listening, cataloging, waiting for the right moment. "Poor Caroline," I heard Aunt Galina say to Svetlana in Russian. "She looks lost." "Does she understand anything happening today?" "Nothing," Svetlana replied. "Like a child at an adult gathering. It's almost sad. Dmitri should have married Russian," Galina continued. "This is what happens when you bring in outsiders." Across the room, Dmitri stood with his father and Alexei, drinking vodka and talking in low voices. I caught fragments of their conversation. "The business deal closes next week," Viktor Sr. said. "Alexei will get his promotion." "And you'll get your cut, Dima. 20% of the kickback." "As agreed." "Good," Dmitri replied. "I'll need it for the divorce. Once I get her to sign the house over, I can file." "You're sure she doesn't suspect?" Alexei asked. Dmitri laughed. "Caroline, please. She barely knows what day it is anymore. Victor's medications have her completely compliant. Next week I'll present her with the power of attorney papers, tell her it's for estate planning, and she'll sign without reading." "She always does." My hands tightened on the glass I was holding, but my face remained neutral. The afternoon wore on. More vodka, more memories, more tears. Around 3 o'clock, Viktor Sr. stood and raised his glass. "I want to make a toast," he announced in Russian, his voice carrying across the hall. "To my brother Mikhail, who brought our family to this country and gave us opportunities we never could have had in Russia. He taught us to be strong, to take what we deserved, to never show weakness. He would be proud of the men we've become." Everyone raised their glasses. "To Mikhail." As the toast ended and people began to sit, I felt the moment settle over me like a mantle. This was it. The time had come. I walked to the front of the room, my heart pounding but my steps steady. Dmitri looked up, confused to see me moving toward the center of attention. "Caroline, what are you—" He started in English. I picked up a glass, tapped it gently with a fork, and the room gradually fell silent. All eyes turned to me, the quiet American wife who never spoke, who never understood, who existed only in the background of their gatherings. When I spoke, it was in perfect Russian, my accent flawless, my pronunciation that of a native speaker. I would also like to make a toast, I began, and the shock on their faces was instantaneous and profound. Dmitri's face went white. Svetlana's mouth fell open. Across the room, I saw Alexei nearly drop his glass. I continued, my voice clear and strong. To honesty, to truth, and to the words people say when they think no one is listening. The silence was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. My name is Caroline Mitchell, I said, still in Russian, and I have been fluent in this beautiful language for 15 years. I studied Russian literature at Yale University. I spent a semester in St. Petersburg, where I lived with a host family and attended lectures at the State University. I can read Pushkin in the original text. I can discuss Dostoevsky's philosophy of suffering. I can quote Bulgakov's Master and Margarita from memory. I paused, looking directly at Dmitri, whose face had gone from white to gray, which means that for the past 4 years, every single day of our marriage, I have understood every word you said, every insult, every cruel joke, every lie you told about me to your family, every plan you made to destroy me. Svetlana stood abruptly. Dmitri, what is she? Sit down, Svetlana, I said sharply in Russian, and she actually obeyed, shock overriding her instinct to protest. I turned back to address the room. You all thought I was stupid. A useless American who couldn't cook, couldn't clean, couldn't even understand when she was being mocked. You called me a servant. You called me barren. You called me pathetic. All in front of my face, thinking I was too ignorant to comprehend. I walked slowly across the room, and people actually backed away from me. Dmitri, I said, stopping in front of my husband. You told your mother I was boring. You told your brother you might trade me in for a newer model. You told your family I was mentally incompetent, while secretly feeding me medications prescribed by a psychiatrist whose medical license was suspended 3 years ago for fraud. His mouth opened, but no sound came out. You thought you were so clever, I continued, my voice dropping to something cold and sharp. The fake psychiatrist. The medications that made me foggy and compliant. The slow drain of my bank accounts. $85,000 stolen over the course of a year. The plan to get me declared incompetent so you could steal my house, the house I bought with my money before I ever met you. I turned to face the entire room. But here's what Dmitri didn't know. I'm not a failed applicant to Reynolds Technologies. I'm not some struggling freelancer barely making ends meet. I am a neurosurgeon. I completed my residency at Massachusetts General Hospital, one of the top surgical programs in the country. I gave up my career because Dmitri convinced me it was temporary, that we would start a family, that a good wife should focus on home. The shock was rippling through the crowd now. I saw Irina's face crumple with realization. Aunt Galina had her hand over her mouth. But I never stopped working, I said. I've been consulting remotely for medical malpractice firms, reviewing cases, providing expert testimony. I've made over $600,000 in the past 4 years. Money Dmitri knew nothing about. Money that's safely locked away where he can never touch it. I pulled out my phone, holding it up. And while he was busy trying to steal from me, I was busy documenting everything. Every conversation, recorded on hidden devices throughout our house. Every text message to his mistresses, yes, multiple women, including Katya from his pharmaceutical company. Every financial transaction showing the offshore accounts, the kickbacks from Alexei's company, the tax fraud. Alexei jumped to his feet. That's a lie? It's not, I said calmly, switching to English briefly before returning to Russian. I have a private investigator's complete report. 6 months of surveillance, financial records, photographs. Your promotion, Alexei? Built on illegal kickbacks facilitated by your brother. Your company's deal closing next week. It's going to be investigated by the SEC because I've already filed a report. The room erupted in chaos. People shouting, Svetlana screaming at Dmitri in rapid Russian. Victor Sr. demanding to know what was happening, but I raised my voice above them all. Enough! The authority in my voice, the voice I'd used in emergency rooms when someone's life hung in the balance, cut through the noise like a scalpel. You want to know why I waited? I said, looking directly at Dmitri. Why I stayed silent for 4 years, listening to your cruelty, your plans to destroy me. Because I wanted you to feel completely safe. I wanted you to think you'd won. I wanted you to incriminate yourself so thoroughly that there would be no escape. I walked back to the front of the room, addressing everyone. Monday morning, I'm filing for divorce. Dmitri will be served with papers that include restraining orders, asset freezes, and notification of criminal charges for fraud, identity theft, and financial exploitation. Viktor Petrov, the fake psychiatrist, is being reported to the Massachusetts Board of Medicine and will face criminal charges. And every single person in this room who participated in mocking me, in planning my destruction, in treating me like a servant in my own home, you all get to live with the knowledge that I heard everything. The silence that followed was deafening. Dmitri finally found his voice, weak and desperate. Caroline, please, I can explain. Explain what? I said coldly. That you didn't mean the things you said? That it was just jokes? That you really loved me? I laughed and it was bitter. You know what the saddest part is, Dmitri? I would have loved you forever. I gave up my career for you. I changed everything about myself to fit into your family, to be what you wanted. And you repaid that devotion by trying to destroy me. Tears were running down my face now, but my voice remained steady. You thought I was weak because I was kind. You thought I was stupid because I was patient. You mistook my love for vulnerability, my silence for ignorance. That was your mistake. I set down my glass and pulled out an envelope from my purse, placing it on the table. That contains copies of the most relevant evidence. Financial fraud, the fake medical records, text messages to your mistresses. Consider it a preview of what's coming. The full package has already been delivered to my attorney, to the police, and to the IRS. I started toward the door, then turned back one last time. Uncle Mikhail once told me something, I said quietly. It was at our wedding reception. He pulled me aside and said in English, yes, he knew English, a man who truly loves his wife builds her up, never tears her down. He knew even then what kind of man you were, Dmitri. I wish I'd listened. I looked around the room one final time, at all the faces that had mocked me, dismissed me, treated me like I was nothing. Goodbye, I said in Russian. I hope you all remember this day. The day the servant became the master. The day the stupid American wife revealed she'd been the smartest person in every room. The walk to my car felt like floating. Behind me, I could hear the eruption of voices, the shouting, the chaos. But I didn't look back. My phone rang before I even left the parking lot. Sandra's voice was excited. Caroline, Rebecca just called. The police got our evidence package. They're opening an investigation into both Dmitri and Viktor Petrov immediately. We're moving faster than expected. Good, I said, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. How did it go? The funeral? I laughed and it felt like releasing years of pressure. Sandra, I stood in front of his entire family and told them everything. In Russian, you should have seen their faces. Oh my God, she breathed. Caroline, that's either the bravest or the craziest thing I've ever heard. How do you feel? Free, I said. For the first time in 4 years, I feel completely free. Over the next few weeks, everything unfolded exactly as planned. Monday morning, Dmitri was served with divorce papers at his office. The restraining order meant he couldn't come home, couldn't contact me, couldn't access our joint accounts, which I'd already emptied of my contributions, leaving only his money. Viktor Petrov's office was raided by federal agents. They found records of dozens of other cases where he'd helped people falsify medical documentation for divorces, custody battles, and insurance fraud. He was arrested within a week. Alexei's company was indeed investigated by the SEC. The kickback scheme Dmitri had been running went deeper than anyone suspected, involving multiple companies and millions of dollars. Both brothers faced federal charges. Katya, the pharmaceutical rep, was fired when their affair became public knowledge. The other women he'd been seeing scattered like leaves in the wind. And me? I moved back into my house. My house, as the deed confirmed, purchased before marriage with my own funds. I threw away every trace of Dimitri, reclaimed every room, and slowly began to rebuild the life I'd abandoned. But the biggest change came from an unexpected phone call 6 weeks after the funeral. Dr. Mitchell? This is Dr. James Chen from Massachusetts General Hospital. I was your supervising attending during your residency. My heart nearly stopped. Dr. Chen, it's been a long time. It has. I heard about what happened. The whole medical community is talking about that fake psychiatrist case, and I wanted to reach out. Caroline, your residency evaluations were exceptional. What you did, walking away from surgery, it never sat right with me. I had my reasons, I know, and I'm not here to judge. I'm here to offer you something. We have an opening for an attending neurosurgeon. It would mean completing the last year of your residency, getting recertified. But Caroline, you were too talented to lose to medicine. Come back. Come home. I stood in my living room, looking out at the garden I'd neglected for years, now beginning to bloom again in the spring sunshine. Yes, I said. Dr. Chen, yes. I would love to come back. 3 months later, I stood in an operating room at Mass General, wearing scrubs again for the first time in 4 years. My hands were steady as I held the scalpel, my mind clear and focused as I performed a complex spinal surgery that saved a woman's life. After the surgery, as I was scrubbing out, I caught my reflection in the observation window. The woman looking back at me was different from the ghost I'd seen 4 years ago. She was strong, scarred, but victorious. My phone buzzed with a text from Sandra. Divorce finalized. House is yours, alimony granted. Dimitri pleaded guilty to fraud charges to avoid trial. 18 months in federal prison. It's over, Caroline. You won. I smiled, peeling off my gloves. Not just won. Survived. Rebuilt. Reclaimed. That evening, I met Rebecca and Sandra for dinner at a restaurant overlooking Boston Harbor. We toasted with champagne, real champagne, not the cheap kind Svetlana used to demand. To new beginnings, Sandra said, raising her glass. To justice, Rebecca added. To understanding every word, I said. And we all laughed. The waiter approached, speaking in rapid Russian to someone behind me, a new hostess, apparently struggling with the reservation system. Without thinking, I turned and responded in Russian, helping translate the problem. The hostess's face lit up with gratitude. Spasibo, she said. Thank you. Пожалуйста, I replied. You're welcome. Rebecca and Sandra stared at me. You know, Sandra said slowly, I don't think I'll ever get tired of seeing you do that. Do what? Surprise people. Reveal that you're so much more than they assumed. I smiled. Thinking of Dimitri in his federal prison cell, of Svetlana's shocked face at the funeral, of all the years I'd spent being underestimated and dismissed. It's not about surprising them, I said quietly. It's about surviving until you're strong enough to stop hiding. Until you remember who you always were, underneath what they tried to make you. 2 years later, I stood in the same church in Brighton Beach, but this time, it was for a wedding. A cousin of Dimitri's who'd reached out to me through social media, apologizing for her family's treatment of me. I never knew what they were doing, Marina had written. I lived in California, only visited occasionally. When I heard what happened at Uncle Mikhail's funeral, I was horrified. You deserved so much better. We'd become friends, and she'd insisted I attend her wedding. Show them you're not afraid, she'd said. Show them you won. So I went, wearing a beautiful blue dress, my hair done professionally, confidence radiating from every pore. The Volkov family was there, of course. Svetlana, aged and diminished, refused to look at me. Irina and Natasha whispered behind their hands but kept their distance. Alexei was absent, still serving his own prison sentence, but others approached me tentatively. Aunt Galina, of all people, came up during the reception. Dr. Mitchell, she said in careful English. I wanted to... I am sorry for how we treated you. I looked at her for a long moment. The apology was awkward, incomplete, probably motivated more by social pressure than genuine remorse. But it was something. Thank you, Galena, I said, in English. I had nothing more to prove. As the evening wound down, I found myself standing outside the church, looking up at the golden domes glinting in the sunset. Beautiful, isn't it? A voice said beside me in Russian. I turned to find an elderly man I didn't recognize. Though his features were familiar, the same sharp cheekbones as Dmitri, the same dark eyes. You must be Caroline, he said, switching to accented English. I am Viktor Volkov Sr.'s brother, Konstantin. I lived in Moscow until recently, came for Marina's wedding. It's nice to meet you, I said carefully. He studied me with shrewd eyes. I heard what happened at Mikhail's funeral. The whole family speaks of it still. Some with anger, some with shame, but all with a certain respect. Respect? You reminded us of something we'd forgotten, Konstantin said. That silence is not weakness. That patience is not stupidity. That a woman who can speak 7 languages and save lives with her hands is not someone to be underestimated. He paused. My nephew was a fool. I didn't disagree. But you, he continued, you are what my generation would call nastoyashchaya zhenshina, a real woman. Strong, smart, resilient. My brother's family could learn much from you. He extended his hand, and I shook it. Live well, Dr. Mitchell, he said. That is the best revenge of all. As I drove home that night, through the streets of Boston toward my house, my home, my sanctuary, I thought about Konstantin's words. Live well. The best revenge, he was right. Every surgery I performed, every life I saved, every morning I woke up free and whole and unburdened, that was my revenge. Not the legal victories, not the prison sentences, not even the spectacular revelation at the funeral. My revenge was being happy. Being myself. Being the woman I'd always been, before someone tried to convince me I was less. I pulled into my driveway and sat for a moment, looking at my house with its lights glowing warm in the windows. Tomorrow I had a complex surgery scheduled, a 12-year-old boy with a spinal tumor. His parents had requested me specifically. Dr. Mitchell saved my daughter's life, the mother had said. We trust her completely. Trust, respect, recognition for my skills and my worth. That was the ending to my story. Not with fire and fury, though the funeral had certainly provided that, but with quiet triumph. The triumph of reclaiming a life, a career, a sense of self that someone had tried to steal. I thought of Dmitri sometimes, in his prison cell, facing the consequences of his cruelty. I thought of Svetlana, forced to confront that the stupid American had outsmarted her entire family. I thought of all of them, living with the knowledge that I'd heard everything, understood everything, and had been 10 steps ahead the entire time, but mostly, I didn't think of them at all, because I was too busy living. Brilliantly, successfully, authentically, and in the end, that was the greatest revenge of all. As I walked into my house, I heard my phone buzz. A text from Dr. Chen. Surgery scheduled for tomorrow at 7 a.m. The boy and his family are lucky to have you, Caroline. See you in the OR. I smiled, set down my keys, and began preparing for the next day. Another life to save. Another chance to do what I was always meant to do. The silence I'd maintained for 4 years had been worth it. Every insult endured, every humiliation swallowed, every moment of pretending I didn't understand, all of it had led to this, to freedom, to truth, to standing in an operating room with steady hands and a clear mind, to being, finally and completely, myself. The girl who'd studied Pushkin in St. Petersburg, the surgeon who'd commanded operating rooms, the woman who'd loved unwisely but learned completely, the key, survivor who'd turned silence into the most powerful weapon of all,